I took 47,000 photographs in my career. The one that destroyed my marriage, I almost didn't take it. Have you ever known something was wrong, felt it in your chest, in your gut, in the way someone holds your hand a little too tight in the dark, but chose to believe the story anyway? That's exactly where this begins. My name is Marcus Webb. 42 years old. Austin, Texas. I shoot weddings, corporate events, the moments people want frozen forever. 15 years of pointing a camera at the truth for a living. And I missed the most important truth of my entire life. Not because I wasn't looking. Because I was looking at the wrong person. Simone was extraordinary. I need you to understand that before I tell you what she did, because this story only lands right if you understand exactly what I had and exactly what I lost. She designed fabric patterns for luxury hotels and high-end offices. The kind of thing you sit on in a waiting room and think, that's actually beautiful, without knowing why. She could walk into any space and immediately understand it. See what was working. See what wasn't. Funny how that ability completely failed her when it came to us. We met at an art show 11 years ago. I had a photo in the exhibit, black and white shot of an empty diner at 3 a.m., neon sign bleeding color through rain on the window. I was standing nearby quietly proud of myself when this woman walked up, tilted her head, and said without even looking at me, technically perfect. But it doesn't make me feel anything. I should have walked away. Instead I said, that's the point. I wanted it to feel lonely. She turned and looked at me like she was making a decision. Then why is the composition so neat? Loneliness is messy. I married her 2 years later. Thought I'd found the one person who would always tell me the truth. Turns out I was half right. The half I was wrong about cost me everything. Hold one specific memory. Because everything I'm about to tell you hits differently once you have this picture. Year 4 of our marriage. Rainy Sunday in November. The kind of day where the whole world shrinks down to whatever room you're in. Simone was at the kitchen table in an old college sweatshirt, sketching a new pattern, interlocking triangles she kept erasing and redoing. I was on the couch editing photos. We hadn't said a word to each other in almost 2 hours. Then completely out of nowhere she looked up and said, "Do you think we're boring?" I looked around at the coffee cups, the rain on the windows, her sketches everywhere. "Deeply," I said. She laughed. Big, surprised, completely unguarded, not the polished version she saved for work dinners. The real one. The laugh that was only ever mine. "Good," she said. And went right back to drawing. I thought about that Sunday more than anything else after Sedona. That was the marriage I thought we had. Quiet. Comfortable. Completely ours. What I didn't know, sitting on that couch feeling perfectly content, was that by the time that memory became the most precious thing I owned, it was already built on something rotten underneath. And the rot had a name. The conference was her idea. 3 days in Sedona, Arizona. High-end design conference, fabric designers, architects, creative directors from all over the country. But one name mattered above everyone else. Garrett Cole. Creative director of one of the most powerful design firms in the country. The men who personally decided which patterns made it into their catalog. One conversation with him could change Simone's career overnight. She'd been trying to get in front of him for 2 full years. "I need you there," she told me, zipping her suitcase. "Spouses are welcome at the evening events. I just don't want to walk in alone." I looked at her. Something was slightly off in her expression, barely there, easy to miss. "You've never needed backup a day in your life." She smiled. "Just slightly off. I just want you there." "Is that so strange?" I booked the flight that same night. Now, standing on the other side of all of it, I turned that conversation over constantly. Which version of her was asking? The wife who genuinely loved me? Or the woman already in over her head, needing me nearby for reasons she could never say out loud? I still don't have that answer. And that uncertainty is its own kind of punishment. There were signs before we ever got on that plane. Clear, right in front of me signs I chose, consciously, repeatedly, to explain away. The way her expression tightened whenever Garrett's name came up, a quick flicker, then deliberately casual, like she was correcting herself in real time. The way she started spending more time getting ready for routine video calls. The way she'd come home some evenings carrying this restlessness I couldn't name, not angry, not sad, just stretched thin in a way that had nothing to do with me. I noticed every single one. I explained every single one away. Because here's what nobody tells you about trust: it doesn't just make you believe the good things. It makes you actively protect the story you've built together. You don't miss the signs because you're stupid. You miss them because believing them would cost you everything. And the human brain will do absolutely anything to avoid paying that price. But the bill always comes. Mine came on day 3. Sedona hits you like a painting the moment you arrive. Red rock formations rising in every direction, ancient, enormous, completely indifferent to your tiny human problems. Our hotel was built right into the hillside. Stone floors, wide windows, mountain views from every room. First evening, welcome reception. I drifted outside and shot the buttes turning deep orange in the sunset. That's when I saw Garrett Cole across the terrace for the first time. Tall. Silver at the temples. The effortless confidence of a man who has never had to try too hard at anything. I looked at him for maybe 4 seconds. Then went back inside. I've thought about those 4 seconds more than I can count. For seconds where I looked directly at the thing about to destroy my life and felt absolutely nothing. An hour later Simone found me practically electric with excitement. He wants to see the full portfolio tomorrow. He asked for me specifically. She grabbed my arm. Glowing from the inside. I pulled her close and told her she was going to be incredible. I meant every word. I had no idea I was the only one in that hug who did. Day 2 I explored solo. Hiked a canyon trail, found a coffee shop, went through photos. Simone sent 2 texts all day. In a session. Then around 3, running late, eat without me. Normal. I ate at the hotel bar, read my book, told myself this was exactly what the trip was for. She got back after midnight. Slipped into the dark room quietly. I was half asleep, that soft state where you feel everything but your body won't respond. I reached over in the dark. Pure instinct. Found her hand. She took it. Held it tight. Like she needed an anchor. She knew exactly where she'd been. She knew exactly what she'd been doing. She lay right next to me, the man she'd been lying to for 4 months, and held my hand like nothing was wrong. I need you to sit with that. Because I did. For a long time after. What I didn't know, lying there feeling nothing but safe and loved, was that in less than 18 hours everything I thought was real was going to come apart completely. And it was going to start with a pair of shoes. Day 3. Conference wraps at noon. I text Simone. Done for the day. Heading back. No reply. I wait an hour. Order coffee. Tell myself she's networking. Doing exactly what she came here to do. I text again. Nothing. I call. Straight to voicemail. And that small cold thing sitting quietly in my chest for months, the thing I'd been deliberately ignoring, suddenly stops being quiet. By 5 o'clock I go downstairs. The girl at the front desk sees me coming. I notice, because noticing is literally my job, something shift in her expression before I even open my mouth. A micro-tightening around the eyes. The specific look of someone already holding information they'd rather not be holding. I'm looking for my wife. Simone Webb, room 217. She's not answering her phone. She types something. Types it again. I can leave a message for her. Are there any private rooms still occupied right now? A pause. Just half a second. But I've spent 15 years capturing the moments that live inside half seconds. I know exactly what that pause means. The conference facility's closed at 2, she says carefully. The only room currently occupied is the Mesa Suite. 4th floor. She stops. Presses her lips together. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Who booked it? She looks at me with the quiet sorrow of someone genuinely sorry to be standing in that exact spot at that exact moment. She doesn't answer. She doesn't need to. Standing at that front desk I had a real choice. I could have walked to the bar. Ordered something strong, Waited for Simone to come back with a reasonable explanation. Kept the comfortable version of reality I'd been living in, the version with rainy Sundays and real laughs and a hand held tight in the dark. I pressed the elevator button instead. Because I'm a photographer. My whole life is built on one belief: you look at what's actually there. Not what you wish was there. Not what's more comfortable. What's actually there. The doors closed. 2, 3, 4. Fourth floor. Silent hallway. Thick carpet swallowing every sound. The kind of quiet that feels deliberately arranged. I walk to the end. Stand in front of the door. Raise my hand. Knock. Silence. Then movement. Then footsteps. The door opens and Garrett Cole is standing there, barefoot, shirt half open, the very specific look of a man who was extremely comfortable 5 seconds ago. Can I help you? I think my wife is in there. Something moves behind his eyes. A calculation. He opens his mouth and I say very quietly, please don't. And walk past him. What I see next isn't dramatic. No scene. Nobody jumps apart. Nobody yells. It's just a pair of shoes on the floor. And that's the thing that breaks me completely open. Simone is near the window. Standing too straight. Trying to look like she's been doing nothing in particular and failing completely. They're on the floor near the couch, her shoes. Kicked off casually. One slightly on its side. The way she only ever took her shoes off when she felt completely, totally at home somewhere. Safe enough to forget herself. Her shoes. After 3 hours. In someone else's hotel room. I photographed 1,000 intimate moments in 15 years. Those 2 simple shoes told me the entire story without a single word. She says my name. How long? I ask. My voice sounds like someone else's. Marcus, just listen. How long, Simone? She looks at the floor. Long pause. Then barely above a whisper, 4 months. 4 months. January. When I was grinding through the biggest project of my career. When I kept coming home late saying sorry, just a few more nights on this. When I was killing myself building our future and she was. Behind me Garrett starts talking. I turn around slowly. I photograph real moments for a living. I walked in here and I know exactly what I'm looking at. A pause. Please stop talking. He stops. I turn back to Simone. You brought me on this trip. You had me sitting downstairs reading a book. You held my hand in the dark last night. Something cracks in her face at that last part. A real crack. The kind that means it finally landed. Then I ask the question I almost don't ask. Was it just ambition? Or was there something I actually missed? Long silence. The kind that has weight. Then she says, so quietly I lean forward to catch it, I didn't plan it. I just liked who I was when I was around him. A pause. That's not your fault. I need you to know that. That is not your fault. And here's the thing about that answer, it was so much worse than yes or no. Because it meant there was nothing I did wrong. Nothing I could have done differently. She made a choice. Over and over again. For 4 months. Every single day while I was trusting her with everything I had. Go back to the room, I say. I need some air. Outside the hotel I stop walking and just stand there. The sun going down over Sedona. The whole sky burning, deep amber, burnt orange, shadows stretching long across ancient red stone. Genuinely, almost cruelly beautiful. The kind of beautiful that doesn't care about your heartbreak. I'm standing there with my chest completely hollow. Both of those things just true at the same time. I lift my camera. 15 years of pure muscle memory. My hands are shaking. In 15 years of shooting, funerals, emergency rooms, every hard human moment, I have never once had shaking hands. Never. They're shaking now. I press the shutter. Blurry nothing. Another bad frame. The shaking gets worse and I grip the camera until my knuckles go white and I think, throw it. Right now. Throw it at those rocks and listen to 15 years shatter on the ground. I don't throw it. I stand there. I breathe. I wait. The shaking slows. The light stays, patient, golden, completely unbothered by everything happening inside me. I raise the camera one final time. Through the viewfinder I see it, a thin streak of cloud cutting across the frame like a crack splitting the sky cleanly in two, and below it those ancient red formations burning quietly in the very last of the sun. I press the shutter. Look at the screen. And I know instantly, that is the best photograph I have ever taken in my life. Made on the worst evening of the last 10 years. Hands shaking. Heart hollow. Standing in light I hadn't earned. I stand there looking at it for a long time. Then I go back inside to end my marriage. Simone has already packed her bag without being asked. Sitting on the edge of the bed, eyes red and swollen. She starts to say something the moment I walk in. I shake my head. I'm not fighting with you. Not here. 8 years deserves better than a hotel argument. I pick up my bag. We check out. Phoenix. Separate flights. Tomorrow I call a lawyer. Marcus, please. Simone. I look at her directly. One last time. I held your hand last night. She opens her mouth. Closes it. At the door I stop. One thing I hadn't planned to say, it just comes out quiet and honest. I hope whoever you are when you're around him, I hope she was worth it. I walk out before she can answer. The divorce took 4 months. Clean on paper. Nowhere near clean inside. 3 weeks after I moved into my new place, small carriage house in East Austin, quiet street, good morning light, I found a box I hadn't opened. Personal photos. Just ours. Camping trip year 2, both sunburned and laughing. Her holding my first published magazine feature with this enormous proud smile. New Year's Eve, silver dress, my arm around her, both slightly blurry from the champagne. I sat down on the floor right next to that box. And the air just left me completely. I put the lid back on. Slid it under the bed. Told myself I'd deal with it later. I still haven't opened it. I threw myself into work. 3 weddings in 6 weeks. At the second one, outdoor ceremony, perfect golden light, the father of the bride started crying during the vows. Real crying. Shaking shoulders, jaw tight, trying to hold himself together. I got the shot. Stepped behind a tree. Stood there staring at the grass for 90 seconds. Then went back and finished the job. I was okay. Just bleeding longer than I'd expected. And here's what I know now, some things are supposed to hurt for a while. The ones that actually mattered always do. 7 months after the divorce, an email arrived from someone I didn't recognize. Mr. Webb, you don't know me. I was at the Sedona conference. I'm a ceramics artist. My name is Petra Nolan. I found your landscape work online, specifically the one with the cracked sky and the red rocks. I've looked at that image probably 20 times. Something about it stops me every time. I also know something of what happened there. I'm sorry. If you ever want coffee, I mean that with zero agenda. And if the answer is no, I completely understand. I read it 4 times. Closed my laptop. Came back. Read it again. She described my Sedona photo perfectly. The cracked sky and the red rocks. She hadn't just looked at it. She'd actually seen it, seen the thing inside it, the thing I put there without even meaning to. I sat on that email for 3 full days. On day 3 I typed 2 sentences. I'd like that. When works for you. Hit send before I could change my mind. Petra lived in Santa Fe. Made large ceramic installations for public spaces, hospitals, schools, libraries. Places where people sit scared or lost and need something solid to look at without knowing why it helps. I liked her work before I ever met her in person. That mattered to me. She was warm, dry, funny in the unexpected way that makes you laugh when you weren't planning to. She'd been through her own bad ending and wasn't performing recovery, she was just actually, slowly, imperfectly doing it. She was late to our first in-person coffee. Walked in flustered and said immediately, I hate being late. Makes me feel like I'm already losing before anything starts. Then caught herself and laughed. Sorry. Still working on not catastrophizing small things. She had this habit of going completely still mid-conversation when something bothered her, then coming back 5 minutes later to address it directly, like she'd been running a private argument and just reached a verdict. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes genuinely a lot to be around. But it was real. And after everything, after the shoes on the floor and the hand held tight in the dark and the box under the bed I still can't open, real was the rarest thing I knew how to recognize. One afternoon we were at the Georgia O'Keeffe Museum in the New Mexico desert. Stopped in front of one of her bone paintings, pale white shape against an enormous blue sky. Petra stood quietly for a moment. Then said, "Do you think she was actually happy out here? Just her in the desert and all these bones?" I thought about it for a real moment. "I think she figured out the exact size of life she actually wanted," I said. "And then she just lived that. Nothing extra. Nothing performed for anyone else." Petra looked at me. "I've been trying to say that to myself for 2 years. You just said it in one sentence." I wasn't trying to be wise. I was thinking out loud about my own life. Sometimes those are exactly the same thing. I'm not wrapping this up with a perfect bow. Petra and I are still figuring out what we are. Some days it feels like something real and quiet is building between us. Other days we're just two people who went through similar fires and recognize the smoke on each other. Maybe it becomes more. Maybe it's already something and I just don't have the right word for it yet. What I know for certain, I laugh when something is genuinely funny. I'm quiet when I need to be. And I'm not performing either one anymore. That Sedona photo is on my wall. The cracked sky. The burning rocks. Taken on the worst evening of the last decade, hands shaking, heart completely hollow, standing in the most patient and beautiful light I've ever seen. It is the best photograph I have ever made. And I finally understand why. When you're in real pain, not the kind you perform for people, but the deep quiet kind that sits in your chest at 2 a.m., you stop arranging the frame. You stop performing. You just see. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that's exactly when the truth stands completely still long enough for you to catch it. I chose to keep my eyes open. Even when everything in me wanted to look away. Even when looking away would have been so much easier. That is the only part of this entire story I am still proud of. And if you've ever stood in a hallway with your heart quietly breaking, knowing what was on the other side of a door and walking toward it anyway, then you already understand something most people spend their whole lives avoiding. The truth doesn't come looking for you. You have to walk toward it yourself. Even when your hands are shaking. Especially then.